Welcome to QI, where tonight we'll be looking at all manner of hoaxes, hokum, hucksters and hogwash. And to help, or more likely hinder us, a veritable horde of hornswogglers with 10 top tips to increase your manhood. It's Sean Locke! And joining him, the esteemed president of the Bank of Nigeria, Danny Baker. By his side, Professor of Hoaxology at the University of the Internet, David Mitchell. And, believe it or not, Alan Davis. Now, in keeping with our theme tonight, one of our buzzers is a hoax. So see if you can tell me which one of these buzzing calls is not the mating call of a deer. Sean goes... Danny goes... David goes... And Alan goes... Hello, dear! Now, starting as we mean to go on, we've actually hidden...
Is it Alan's?
Yes.
It was Danny's. I was going to say Danny's right up to the...
Right at that last moment. Now, listen, you've got hoax cards here, little jokers to play, because in keeping with the theme, there will be one question which is a hoax.
Thank you.
And you play your hoax card and you get extra points. If you play it and it isn't a hoax, you lose points, but don't have your hoax cards unspent at the end of the game.
What happens?
Well, I'm not going to tell you.
But it may be more than once.
You could possibly know.
Yeah. I don't think this format point's been worked out in enough detail. No. You should have decided whether you can play them more than once.
No, you can't. I was just thinking of being generous, and then I realised it was foolish.
For the pilot of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, did somebody go, and if we get one wrong, that's OK? Yeah, that's OK, yeah. Oh, hang on.
How many lives do we get?
Yeah.
Can you just do that, or do you have to say something?
You can say, I think that's a hoax, yeah.
Right. That would say something. You can't just go, I did that, you didn't see it.
No.
I did it when I...
You have to make it manifest. Oh, God, I had no idea this whole thing would be so complicated.
I don't know about you, but I'm going to just do it on the first question, then none of us can lose out. If we all do it on the first question...
We all do it on that.
We all lose points, and then it's just done.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about it and spend the rest of the show going, guys, I haven't used my hoax card. What do you reckon, guys? You in for that?
We're all going to say yes, but we're all going to not really do it.
Yeah, yes. It's game theory,
I might
writ
use
large.
it, but when I'm using it, it might be a hoax.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I can see I made a terrible rod for my own back here.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's see what happens. There's some characters behind me, shifty-looking characters. What were they up to last night?
This isn't a hoax. They were all definitely up to something last night. Thank God we didn't do that.
Yeah.
Were they cottaging? They were cottaging.
Sean Locke!
They were all out cottaging. It was a really tough night's cottaging. And they go, we need a pint after that.
They were brewing. They were up all night making a picnic table.
Before you get too insulting, they're in the studio tonight. I just thought...
They were winning the Mr. Handsome contest.
That's more like it.
But were they harming horses? You know, when they people harm horses, like slash horses?
No.
But they
it was a nighttime covert activity like slashing
goats.
horses.
They were slashing goats.
No, let's assume we wouldn't invite into the studio
Were they?
people who maimed animals.
Yeah. Were they pretending to be gas men and thereby stealing the property of aged people?
No. If I told you that this was in Wiltshire, would that help?
Cathedral stealing.
Grave robbing. Grave robbing's always...
Or they drew something rude.
In the summer.
On Stonehenge. They drew something rude on Stonehenge.
Crop circles.
Oh, Alan, well done. Crop circles. Absolutely right. There they are. The equipment needed for crop circling, a plank with rope. But what was the crop circle? We commissioned them.
A QI symbol.
A QI crop circle. And they did it for us. And it's rather impressive.
Because
We're rather
QI is
pleased
run
with
by
it.
aliens.
Would you like to see it? Would you like to see it?
I certainly would.
Well, let's have it. We actually went to the expense of having a travelling aerial shot.
Oh.
What do you think of that? We did.
That's real. That's like the Led Zeppelin cover.
Oh, you fail. I'm afraid it was real. The extraordinary thing is that almost within half an hour of it being completed and the dawn rising, we were contacted by people. Someone wanted to know, they said, is it real or is it man-made? To which the answer is...
I asked that about sandwiches all the time.
But it's a rather marvellous example of a breed of phenomenon that has been going since when?
Is the farmer... Is the farmer
80s.
Here tonight?
We have recompensed the farmer. It doesn't actually do much
but how
damage.
many mice were frightened in the making of that?
We can't tell how many mice were
I'll bet
frightened.
this is older than we suspect.
It's actually very recent.
Is it?
It is really, yeah.
80s?
Well, 70s it began, and it got more and more refined. There was a man
Like
called...
Pizza Express.
There were a couple called... Yeah. There's a fellow called Doug Power and Dave Chorley, and they admitted that they'd been responsible for almost all the crop circles. They used to be on the news every summer. There'd be aerial shots, and there were people who called themselves seriologists who genuinely believed that these were the work of people from outer space or from magnetic forces from ley lines or all kinds of nonsense.
They'd do things like they'd do a crop circle and then they'd leave a couple of scorch marks or something.
Yes.
As if the engine had blasted off back into space.
We've got... Where are our three here? Put your hand... There, look, is that John? John Lundberg.
Yeah.
There you are. There's John. Can you tell me how you did yours without giving away too many trade secrets? What's the most technological item you need?
We need something called a stalk stomper, which is a plank of wood and a loop of rope that you put under your foot to flatten the crop. And to actually mark out the design, you use a surveyor's tape. So it's very, very kind of simple techniques and very simple tools.
What about your spaceship? What spaceship?
I'm saving up for one, but the fee I got for this, it's going to take a while.
So, how many do you do a year in the season?
We don't say how many we make, but we've made hundreds over the years that we've been doing it.
And do people... are there still those who believe or who refuse to believe that it's all hoaxers like you?
Absolutely. Well, they've been ringing your production office, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right.
Are there people who've ever thought that graffiti on, like, train lines was done by aliens?
That's logical.
Oh, well, the lines in the Nazca Desert, which are...
Very good point, the Nazca lines.
The Nazca lines, which they say can only be seen from space, which is not true. There they go.
No,
we
can see it from here.
The great... The great fraud von Daniken, who wrote Chariots of the Gods and all those books in the early 70s, he said there were runways for ancient spacecraft, is what he said. And as Carl Sagan said, hang on, these people come millions of light years across the universe, and they need runways? What, are they in B-52s? What do they need runways for?
I've been there. What's extraordinary about that place is one of the driest places on the planet in southern Peru, just above the Atacama Desert. And because of this man, Daniken, people came from far and wide on motorbikes and they churned the place up. Some of these are only about 10 centimetres deep, the lines, and they've stayed like that simply because it hasn't rained.
Right.
For decades and centuries in some parts of that part of South America. And so every line that you can see around there is some hippie who's sort of gone around. It's now, banned from going there. But they're rather splendid.
It looks like maybe if it's just they've stayed, they're not very deep, but they've stayed just because it doesn't rain, maybe the people who did them didn't really want them to stay that long. They were just pissing around and would be rather embarrassed.
Yes.
The same way as, if you're on the beach at night, a bit pissed, you write the word dick. Imagine you went back 2,000 years later. You'd be mortified. People were sort of worshipping it.
That's absolutely right. John Lundberg, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. There you are.
I think in the States, where it's quite popular too, not as popular as here, but the second biggest crop in the States is marijuana, after corn.
Really?
Yeah, in America.
In certain states in America, there are huge areas of it. It's very difficult to know what to do with it, how to get rid of it. Sorry?
The cauliflower is in decline.
Is it? I like cauliflower.
I love cauliflower.
If you wanted to please me, Alan, one day, make me a cauliflower cheese and I'd be a happy person.
Very well.
Thank you.
It's gone down from 33,000 acres to 28,000 acres in Britain.
Very good.
Has there been a decline in demand for cauliflower?
Yeah.
People are stupid,
They
aren't
are stupid.
It's a lovely vegetable.
Yeah.
They don't know how to cook it, you see. They just think it doesn't taste of anything because they boil it and then it doesn't taste of anything.
Also, if you break off a little bit of cauliflower and look at it...
floret.
It looks a floret. It looks like a tiny albino tree.
It does. I so agree. And if you're on a low-carb
fruit.
diet, you can mash it. And it's a very good substitute for mash.
I like to
Works
do
very
it. I cook. I like to do it. I like to do it in a bin with loads of other rubbish. And it all piles up round there, and then you put an e-bit out, and the magical men take it away in a van. Because I've never opened the fridge and gone, oh, that's brilliant, there's a cauliflower in there. I've always gone, oh, Christ, there's a cauliflower in there. We're going to have to cook it. There's always the bin.
That's how I react to a rat.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ, we're going to have to cook it.
I do like it, but it's a pain.
Right.
Pain in the neck, isn't
I don't
it?
think I've ever seen
really,
how
no.
it grows. Does it?
It is.
What is
It
it? Is
just
it the centre
cook
of a
it.
plant or something?
Yeah,
What a
just cook
cauliflower.
it.
You are
cook
an
it
urban
twice.
boy. Can we have one
you have to cook
conversation
it
rather
twice.
than three?
You have to cook it twice, though.
You have to cook it twice.
No, you don't.
Cauliflower, you can't just cook it. You have to cook it twice. You have to cook it, boil it, and then you put it in another dish and cook it again with the sauce. It's a nightmare. It's like such a demanding vegetable. Just want so much. It's all about time. I want to spend time with you before you eat it.
Well, thank you, Nigella. Yeah. Anyway, yes, far from being proof of a more intelligent life form, crop circles can be made using a plank of wood, some rope, a hat sometimes, a couple of coat hangers, that kind of thing. But conversely, would you believe that they put a man on the moon?
Who? Who? These guys?
NASA.
Oh, NASA. Yes, yeah, I think
of course.
they put a
You
man
believe
on
that?
the moon. Yeah.
I believe it.
Yes,
Yes.
you believe it. Good, that's all. That's sort of all at the end of the question, really. But you probably know that quite a lot of people don't believe it.
No.
Yeah, but, well, I sort of believe one thing,
Yeah.
which is I kind of believe that they might have done some mocked-up fake photographs.
Really, why?
Because I was showing... Someone convinced me of it.
Yeah.
But I was talking about the angle of light and the shadows on the moon and all that. But then I did an advert with Patrick Moore, and I said, so, Patrick, did they land on the moon? And he looked so annoyed with me.
Yeah.
He explained to me how he had helped map the moon for NASA and he'd spent years on the project and the landing site was partly his idea and if I ever spoke to him again, he was going to be sick in my eyes.
They are rather tight. If you'd spoken to Buzz Aldrin, he might have punched you.
I was going to say...
Buzz Aldrin punched someone because
Did he?
he just got so tired of these conspiracy arses.
I think it was a television documentary about...
Well, there have been several, of course.
You know, look at this photo. This couldn't possibly have been taken on the moon. This is obviously taken in a studio.
You're getting me started now because one gets very sort of strange about this. But there are a lot of conspiracies. 6% of Americans believe that man didn't land on the moon, but 25% of Britons believe that they didn't. So that's a quarter of our nation are not convinced, apparently.
That's so depressing.
Isn't it?
It is.
The flag, it's one of the thing I read...
The flag is another thing,
it's
yes.
the flag, and you
Yeah,
think,
but there it is.
Well, obviously they've starched the flag because they wanted to get a good photograph of it. They've stiffened the flag.
No, they haven't stiffened it. That's the point. The fact it's rumpled. There's no breath of wind out there, obviously, because you're in space, which is, as it were, a vacuum. But what there is movement. If you impart movement to something, it doesn't stop moving for a long time because there's there's no resistance against it. So they unpacked it, unfurled it, put it down, and it moved back and forth. People said, breeze. Ha-ha. As if, A, they would be stupid enough to fake it and allow the tape that had the breeze in it to go out.
But also, if you went to the moon, the least you'd expect is a flag moved a bit strangely. You know what I mean? You expect him to make the soup dragon, you think, OK, he's not there. The flag moves a bit strangely, I can go with that.
Yeah. Why isn't one of them holding up a camera? Because you can see him reflected, the one taking the picture's reflected in the visor of the one, and he's not holding up a camera like that, you see. But that's because they didn't, in the visors, put a camera up in front of their visor. They were mounted.
You couldn't really actually imagine them getting a camera out,
Yes,
click,
like that.
winding it on.
I would just say, though, in defence of the people who suspect that there may be something afoot, the track record of the American government in terms of deceiving its population isn't great.
But...
And if you were a little bit
Alan,
dubious, I wouldn't blame you.
400,000 people were employed on this thing, plus the 12 astronauts. And it may be that the Americans have a bad record on doing covert things, but they have an even worse record on getting found out. The president can't keep a secret of where his penis is. Do you seriously think that they would somehow... You know, look at Clinton there. You know, if they can't even keep a secret of banging an intern in the White House...
Well, no, because in the old days, she would have just disappeared.
Yes. But she didn't. You know, and we know what Kennedy got up to. The fact is...
I'll tell you one thing. I think NASA killed Michael Jackson. That's a fact.
Right.
I do. I believe they killed him because he died last summer, yeah? He died in about July last year. It was he died the same week that it was the anniversary of the initial moon landing of the first moonwalk, right? Oh. They resent the fact that any time anyone puts moonwalk into Google or anything, it comes up with him sliding backwards with a hat on, and not the billions they spent going up to do a moonwalk. They hated that and they killed him. And I believe that's a fact.
I don't think
NASA, gone around the world now.
I don't think NASA would have get organised to kill him, but I think it might have been Buzz.
Yeah.
Because he's clearly a very angry man.
Buzz Aldrin
He's gone to the moon. It was pointless. People don't believe he went there. It was pointless. So of course he's going to kill someone.
I'd like to go to the moon.
You would like?
Oh,
yeah, I'd like to do that.
Yeah. I mean, two of the other things, just in case people are saying, but you haven't mentioned the clincher. One was the idea that below the lunar module that landed, there was no crater or sense of disturbed dust. The fact is, the engine's cut off and it hovered down and it very, very quickly landed. And unlike in science fiction films, it doesn't send out spears of flame as it descends. That just didn't happen. So,
because it was designed by, you know, human brains and geniuses, and not a lot of people sitting tapping away at the internet who've got to go up to work in the morning.
Yeah,
who do you trust here?
We are in trouble as a species if people refuse to believe in things that they couldn't actually do themselves.
So true. So true. And the other one was the footprints. They said, oh, look, there's too much moisture because look how clear they are. Only a sort of caked mud could do that, but actually you could do that with flour. The fact is, it's just very fine ground, and it makes... And there's, of course, it's a vacuum again. It coheres. And the other thing with the mirrors that Apollo 12 astronauts put on the moon, which are now used for bouncing lasers off, for detecting, for example, how far the moon is getting away from us. And you can make incredibly accurate measurements because of mirrors on the surface of the moon. And perhaps to me the clinching one is that America's enemy at the time in the space race was the Soviet Union. And not once did they make a suggestion that they thought America hadn't done it. They never said, no, we know this was hoax.
Yeah.
The fact is, for every ill-conceived argument that the moon landings were a hoax, there's a perfectly logical explanation to put our minds at rest. Now, for something a little closer to home, how would you make your house the most famous house in Britain?
Oh, that's easy.
Yep.
You murder lots and lots of people, dismember them, and bury them in the garden.
You marry the Queen. You marry the Queen.
Yes.
And you say, you're not living there in those... No, love, you're not living in those palaces anymore.
You're living in 3 Ironside Crescent,
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Those would work. Yep, those would work.
Some sort of spectacular suicide? I suppose, actually, the murdering people would work better, which I think is sad.
But this is a bet.
Balloons? Is it like in the film Up? You just tie loads of balloons and your house goes...
Oh, that would be sweet. That would. This was a bet that took place in 1810 between Samuel Beazley and Theodore Hook. That Hook couldn't make any house he chose the most famous residence in London in 1 week. He had a week in which to do it, but in fact he sort of... I mean, he prepared over the week, but it all happened in one day.
This.
Yeah?
He started ordering goods, all kinds of different goods from all kinds
4,000 different tradesmen and services in all the commercial directories all over London. He started ordering chimney sweeps. So first thing in the morning, there were 12 chimney sweeps, all arriving like that. And then more and more and more and more and more arrived. I mean, it became absolutely gigantic. 12 coal carts, there were cake makers, doctors, apothecaries, surgeons, lawyers, priests for dead bodies, undergraduates, hat makers, haberdashers, bootmakers, fishmongers, butchers' boys. A dozen pianos arrived. And before long, the governor of the Bank of England had turned up to see what the fuss was about. It was in Berners Street, just off north of Oxford Street. And there it is.
That sign doesn't fit that bit of wall.
It doesn't really. And yet, I suppose if they put it the way it would, you'd have to read it in portrait rather than
needed to go back to the drawing board with that one.
I think you're right.
Got that all wrong.
Or just chill out about the whole thing.
folded it round, mate.
that'd be nice. Is it a bit like, so the equivalent is like going on the internet and ordering the lot?
Yes, exactly.
I'll have everything.
Exactly, basically. And the poor woman whose name was Mrs. Tottenham was just besieged. I mean, it wasn't his house.
He didn't live there?
No, he chose it. No, he just chose this house. That was the point of the bet. I can make that house, 54 Berners Street, the most famous house in London.
They used to have great bets, didn't they, in the 19th century?
Yeah. People don't make bets like that anymore. I mean, in the Regency period, when this happened, in the early 19th century, and particularly in the clubs, Brooks's and White's club in St James's, staggering bets. £3,000 bet between Lord Alvaney and a friend of his, on which Raindrop would get to the bottom of the... and £3,000 in those days was... I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine. You could have a servant for £10 a year.
Yeah.
Well, you know, so, I mean, £3,000 is an estate.
This is
a country house with thousands of acres. It's just...
This is how bored people were before television.
Basically. Theodore Hook betted a man called Beazley that he could make 54 Berners Street the most famous house in London. What conclusion did the great biologist Stephen Jay Gould draw from a lifetime study of fish?
Oh.
Yeah.
They haven't got any legs.
Is that his lifetime study?
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't his lifetime study of a fish.
Yeah. After a while, they smell.
Yeah. He's a bit thick, and he just stared at me, and they haven't got any legs.
Starfish don't have brains. It's the kind of Louis Walsh of the aquatic world. They really don't have brains, they're starfish.
And they're not really fish, are they, starfish, to be honest?
Well, the word fish is in there, which kind of qualifies them, I think.
Well, is a starfish a fish? Is a jellyfish a fish?
Well, yeah,
cuttlefish a fish?
Yes,
but
the starfish...
crayfish is a lobster.
There's a division, isn't there, in the world, whether it should be down to sort of experts in biology, whether things are fish, or whether it should be down to menus.
Yes.
Certainly, for example, a crayfish comes under fish in a menu.
He looks like he's reading the sell-by date on that.
He does, doesn't he? Stephen Jay Gould was very great. He's dead now. He's very great. He won a Nobel Prize. He was a paleontologist and an extraordinary biologist. And he came to a conclusion which is...
They can feel no love.
No, that there is no such thing as a fish. A fish has no biological meaning. There is just...
Well, I'm absolutely right. Go with menus.
On a menu it does. But in a menu, a fish is not the same as shellfish or seafood, is it?
It often comes in the same bit and separate from pudding.
Things that live in the sea.
How can something...
pudding are different.
Yeah. How can something not be something? Something can't be not something, can it? But if you've created a something, then something has to be that something, otherwise you haven't created a something. So it has to be a fish if there is the idea of a fish in the first place.
I swear there's a philosophy somewhere.
Slow down, Plato.
There's some sort of ontological argument going there, and of course to us that we use the word fish. But biologically speaking, a salmon is more related to, say, a camel than it is to a hagfish. Like, there are lots of things that fly, like a bumblebee flies, a vulture flies, and there are flying lizards. They're not all birds.
No.
But we call things that swim in the sea fish, and actually, biologically, evolutionarily, they have absolutely nothing to do with each other at all.
So his life's
they're
work.
more closely related to us than to each other.
A friend of mine claims to be allergic to all seafood and fish.
Right,
Is that possible?
Freshwater as well as seawater?
Yes, so everything from a prawn via plankton to a trout is a no-go area, he says, and I think he's just fussy.
Some people say, oh, no, I'm terribly allergic to shellfish, and then they order scallops, because they don't know it's shellfish. They eat it and they're fine.
Yeah.
Nobody ever says they're allergic to starters, do they?
What do elasma branches taste like?
It's basically sharks and things like that are elasma branches, and rays. Nice. Manta rays and things like that are elasma branches. Rays can be very tasty.
Oh, yeah. Skates.
Skates, lovely. All skate wing with black butter and capers. Stop it at once. After a lifetime study of fish, biologist Stephen Jay Gould concluded that there's no such thing as a fish. And while we're at it, and under the sea, how many fish are there in this photograph?
Well, it's going to be a trick question the other way. You set that up.
Well, given that there's no such thing as...
That's so unfair.
Stephen Gould, where are you when I need you?
Deeply unfair. Well, you see that shell on the right?
Yes.
Along the top of it is a long fish-like thing with an eye. That's actually part of the shell. This muscle actually makes a thing that looks like a fish so that another fish comes along and its own parasitic larvae sort of explode into the fish and live in its gills and are sent away and dispersed and grow elsewhere. We've got some film of it. This is it, the two eyes of this thing. That looks like a fish. And this puff of larvae go off. To a fish, that looks like it might be a tasty morsel, but it's just bits of flesh that have grown up on the top of the...
Clever.
It's very clever, isn't it? That was just one fish. The other example was of animal mimicry deployed by the broken ray's muscle. And so from one skilled hoaxer to another, what did Nostradamus get right?
The hat. You got the hat right. The hat looks good. It's a big mistake. The green coat with the brown hat. It's crazy. The hat looks cool.
Who is he?
You've not heard of Nostradamus?
I've heard of him, but I've just heard of him. I've no idea where he lived.
His name was Michel de Nostradame. He lived from 1503 to 1566. He was a Provençal apothecary. And he did many things, but including writing these hundreds of quatrains, these four-line verses.
Were these deliberately obtuse? I'm like David,
Yes.
I'm aware of it, the headlines on it, but why were they so obscure?
Well, he was a mystic, and I suppose who knows, he got drugged up and he just wrote down a four-line verse of
chemist,
whatever he
wasn't he?
saw.
He was a chemist.
Well, he was an apothecary, a chemist, exactly.
So
what
he could have had access to all kinds of crazy hooch.
Exactly.
But, yeah, so he published a book of essentially gibberish.
Yes. And a lot of idiots.
Because even the people now who've sort of said, oh, that predicts the Hitler or that predicts 9/11, even people would think, well, actually, if you bought that in 1530, that's not good value for money because all the things it's predicting won't happen for ages. And so what it is then is nonsense.
But
in fact, it's only ever any use to predict something just after the thing's happened.
Yes, because then people go, wow, yeah. But one thing he did do that is genuine, and this was the question, is he did a fantastic recipe for cherry jam. Because he read other books, and one of the books he read about was about jams. And his cherry jam recipe, we are assured today, is still as good as it ever was.
Really?
So that is a thing Nostradamus did that is provably, demonstrably, and repeatably true. He also made aphrodisiac jams made of sparrows' brains and all that sort of thing. But generally speaking, his cherry jam... It's something he got right.
I might make some jam.
Yeah. Why not?
You know what you need? Fruit.
Fruit, sugar.
And sugar.
Pectin.
No, I'm not going to make nice jam.
Oh, I see. Fair enough. What sort of jam are you going to make?
Horrible jam.
Oh, there could be a market in that.
Cinnamon sticks.
Sean's horrible jam.
Sean's horrible jam.
You don't know what I put in this stuff. It's up to you. It's lottery jam, I call it. It's bingo. Sean's bingo jam. It's one jar in every 100. It's amazing. The rest of the time, it's instant vomit as soon as you open it.
Anyway, yes, when Nostradamus wasn't predicting stuff, he was very busy compiling a rather excellent collection of jam recipes. Who's the most famous person to have been beaten at chess by a machine? What? Hello? What
Do you
now?
think that's a massive hoax?
Yeah, hoax.
Oh! You're wrong. It was entirely true. David's got yours left.
No, I did mine now.
No. Oh, well. Anyway.
Anyway,
I thought,
it was too
right.
late. The question had finished.
No. You
too
stopped
late.
me. No. So, who is the most famous person who's been beaten by a machine at chess? You get double points if you can mention
Me.
the name of the machine.
Me.
Are you the most famous person?
Yeah, I got beaten by a Hoover.
Is that right?
Yes.
And
Someone just
nobody
left it on and it moved the pieces around and it still beat me. That's how bad I am at chess.
It's the key thing is the question is not most famous chess grandmaster. It is so it could be Marilyn Monroe.
He's not a famous chess player then.
No. That's very well worked out. I mean, there is
The Queen
Garry
is-
Kasparov, the great
he lost to the
grandmaster.
ice.
Deep Blue.
Deep Blue.
Yeah, but that wasn't...
The Queen is the most famous person in the world, probably. Did she lose to a ZX80?
This was someone who was more famous than the Queen in his day and was bigger than a Queen, as it were. Had a bit higher rank than Queen.
Jesus.
No. Jesus isn't really a rank.
I would say Jesus.
It's a rank.
I am Jesus.
rank you.
It's more famous than the Queen, though.
Yes, that's certainly.
You can't handle the truth.
Jesus Plays Chess sounds like an indie band already. It will be. It will be.
Yeah.
Napoleon.
Napoleon is the right answer. Do you know what the machine might have been? It was a famous machine in its day.
Would it be some sort of kind of clever wind-up automaton?
It was an automaton, and it was unbelievably clever. It was called the Mechanical Turk, and the Turk itself was made of machinery, and you would open the doors, rather like a magician showing a trick, to show that it was empty, though in fact there would be a man inside who was a chess master. He would manipulate the machinery such as to make the Turk actually pick up and move the pieces. So it was a genuinely astonishing piece of machinery that unfortunately burned in a fire in 1854. But Napoleon, who rather fancied himself at chess, and of course, being emperor, I dare say nobody ever rather dared beat him, so he was extremely annoyed to be beaten in 19 moves by this machine.
Right.
So, yeah. And many others were beaten. You might like to know Benjamin Franklin, who was in Paris at the time as ambassador to the newly formed United States. Yeah, he lost as well.
What was the deal with it? They were unaware that there was a grandmaster inside.
Yeah.
Oh, OK.
They generally thought it was a machine. Charles Babbage also played it, and he was beaten by it, and he's the father of computing to many people that invented the difference engine. This
Maybe,
kind of
if he'd known
machine.
there was a man inside, he would never have invented the difference engine.
Exactly. But it was the sensation of the age. It was a really remarkable thing. And in about 1989, a magician rebuilt it and sort of redid it. It cost him $120,000 to build a version of it that worked as well. The name of the man who invented it was Wolfgang von Kempelen, who lived from 1734 to 1804. And he did it to impress the Empress Maria Theresa. And it sure did. It impressed everybody. It's rather wonderful. The Mechanical Turk. A manned automaton that beat Napoleon at chess, amongst other people. Now, what's the best way to give a squad of American soldiers the screaming heebie-jeebies in a plane?
Snakes.
Snakes might do it. It's a pretty good way. The point is, suppose you want to research people panicking.
Is this a cash prize? Is that it?
It could be.
Well, that when they were trying to test, you know, how can we test the evacuation procedure? So they'd get people in a plane and turn the lights off and do some fake smoke, but it's obviously not crashing. And so now everyone evacuates, and it happens in a very orderly way. When this actually happens under, you know, situation of real jeopardy, it's a massive fight and loads of people die. So, in order to properly, you know, fake the conditions of jeopardy, they say, OK, the first one that gets out gets $20,000, and then suddenly everyone's panicking and screaming, and it is like there's a real...
Actually, that would work brilliantly, but because they're soldiers, you don't have to do that. Because they're soldiers, they do... Basically, you can just do what you like with them. So what you do is you hoax them, you put them up in a plane, and you get the pilot to shut off one of the engines and act very well, going into a hell of a panic. So that the soldiers genuinely think they're going to die. And then you give them forms to fill in, because what you're interested in is how human beings respond under extreme stress. And the forms are basically, who do you want to leave your money to? Fill in these forms. You've got like sort of 20 seconds. And you won't be surprised to learn that people are crap under those conditions. And they just write drivel and they're no use at all.
What was the point of doing this? I don't see anyone's learned anything from that experiment. It just seems to be unnecessarily cruel.
Yeah, you learn how people respond under genuine stress. I know you may say...
You know, they panic and they shit themselves.
I think I'm going to play my Joker about that.
Oh, no. So sorry.
Nostradamus' jam was about that.
I don't know why experiments remind me of, you know, elbow licking, humans licking their elbows.
Yeah.
Can a human lick their own elbow?
No, can't be done. Can't be done.
Oh, hello. That's interesting.
OK.
Because you got some points a few times ago when you were here saying that...
The very first show.
It was actually the very first show. Did you know that it's impossible for a human being to lick their elbow? We have someone in the audience. Would you like to put your hand up? Who can lick their elbow? Put your hand up if you can lick your elbow. There you are.
Yeah.
Now, what's your name?
Selena.
Selena.
Yeah.
Selena is now going to, I'm afraid, have some points deducted from you, Danny Baker, by licking her elbow.
I said a human being, not some kind of freak.
As you can see, she's a charming human being.
Can't do it.
Let's have a look. That is a woman licking an elbow.
There you go.
Did you see that, ladies and gentlemen?
Everyone. That's brilliantly done. Is there a reason for this?
Can you do both together?
Is there a reason for it? Have you always been able to do it, or is it just you were dropped as a child or something? Yeah? You can just do it?
Yeah.
I'd have it looked into. It's not right.
It does mean we will have to deduct some points from you.
Oh, well, on the repeats, I look forward to that on Dave. Before it starts,
Dave.
the following programme has an erroneous score.
We like to get these things right. In 1962, the US Army devised a series of experiments that put the fear of God into soldiers to test their form-filling skills under stress. But enough hoaxes. It's time for some real general ignorance. So, fingers on buzzers, if you please.
Are there hoaxes in general ignorance?
No.
There's no... with the joke of God?
We've missed the hoax, haven't we?
We've missed it. We've missed it.
You will find out. How can you tell if someone is lying?
Hello, dear.
They get sweaty palms, the pulse starts racing, they get heartbeat goes faster, the sphincter, if you clench up your sphincter...
Let's just suppose that you haven't got a finger on their sphincter and that you aren't holding their hand. Yeah.
What they've said turns out not to be true.
Yeah. Yay! That's how you can tell they have lied.
That doesn't work either. It might be that they thought it was true, and they were just idiots.
Yeah. And it only tells you they have lied. It doesn't tell you they are lying.
How about if they begin the sentence with, the Liberal Democrats have a lot in common with us?
Very good.
Hello, dear.
They work for the state.
Oh, is there a bitterness behind that?
No, it's just an observation.
Is it something physical?
It is, but tactile.
Is it the
point
thing?
you can't touch them.
And I fear klaxons. But is it something about whether when they're just about to think about it, they look up left instead of up right, or up right instead of up left, or something to do with their eyes?
Yes! You were right to fear klaxons.
Yeah.
Is it... I think I know what it is.
Embrace the klaxon.
It's just before they deliver the crucial detail, they go, yeah, well, it's about... Ooh... About 10, I reckon. I mean...
Sean, you are more right than David by a long way. The point is, it's very hard to see if someone's lying. There's nothing in the body language, nothing in the face, nothing in the eyes, nothing in the nose touches, all those things that people think are to do with it. It's all to do with what they're saying and how they're speaking. It appears to be.
Is this why it's easier? They say it's easier to tell if someone's lying on the phone than if it's face to face.
Exactly so. They tested over 20,000 subjects, showing them videos of people telling the truth and lying. They found that the people perform no better than chance. Not only that, so-called experts, polygraph operators, police investigators, judges and psychiatrists, returned the same result. But if you do it just on sound alone, people are much more accurate, about 73% accuracy at listening to lies. So the thing to do is shut your eyes.
Is that man going to shoot him?
It's a very early polygraph. It does look rather bizarre, doesn't it?
Right.
I guess it's a murder
John.
suspect.
Wrong.
Presumably that means it's easier to dupe the deaf than the blind. which isn't what you'd think.
No, it isn't. No, it's true. Having said all that, there is a Dr. Ekman, who's a leading researcher, who claims that 50 out of 20,000 people do have a natural ability to detect lies by actually looking at expressions, and these are very, very few people. He named them the truth wizards, and they're apparently able to read micro-expressions that last milliseconds in ways that others aren't. So, there you are. The truth is that most people can't tell if you're lying, but they'll have a better chance if they focus on your speech rather than your body language. What's the one thing you know for sure about oranges?
They're orange.
They're orange. Oh! That was the problem. When you do red ones, and most of them aren't orange, in fact. I know they are. Most of the ones in the supermarket are, but they have to make them orange a lot of the time. In the southeast, in warm countries, oranges are actually green. And there you can see how green they are. The interior part is orange, and juicy and lovely. But supermarkets tend to use an ethyl gas to de-green, as they call it, to take the chlorophyll out, because we shoppers prefer to see an orange skin.
I'm a sucker for when they have variations.
No, me too, I like it, but most punters, it seems, would like their oranges to be...
I've worked in orange groves. I've worked in orange groves, and they were orange.
Where was it?
It was in Israel, in the kibbutz, and I worked in the orange groves, got the sack, fell asleep when I was meant to be mending irrigation pipes. That's not the story. And they were orange.
Yes.
So they were the little blighters were orange. All of them. There wasn't one little green bugger amongst them.
orange. They do grow orange, but in the really hot, humid countries, they're green. And, in desert and in places made up like the kibbutz.
Tell you something about oranges.
What's it?
They're not the only fruit.
They're not the only fruit. A good literary remark there. And do you know where the word comes from? What the original word was? It's naranja.
Naranja.
Which is
Spanish for
Spanish for orange.
And the original naranja is Sanskrit. And what happened is it does, as words do, it loses the N. So you get an orange, an orange, and we think, oh, that's an orange, must be an orange. But in fact, it was an orange.
An orange.
It was like a nada was a
French
snake.
say orange, don't they? It should be called a nan-orange.
Just an orange would do. An orange.
An orange?
An orange juice.
An orange.
An orange juice, yeah. That would do it.
Yeah.
Well done.
Is it apple? Should be called a napple?
No, it doesn't work with apple. It works with something. An apron, for example.
A nimper?
It was an apron. No, that's silly. But it works with a nada. A nada has now become an adder, but it was originally a nadra.
Nada, right.
Nadra. And an eek name, your eek name, a nickname became a nickname, but it was originally an eek name. Yeah.
What's an eek? What, like?
It became a nickname.
Right.
A nickname is a name you give someone that isn't their real name.
The old
Like
name.
someone might call you...
What was it called before?
Eek name.
What does that mean, though? Eek name. Where does that come from? That's not a fruit.
No!
Right.
Oh, man. Heaven help us all. Oranges are not necessarily orange, and there's a good case for saying that they started out as greens. What do swimming pools smell of?
Children.
Probably true. Yep.
Well, the answer I suspect you're looking
Oh,
for
dear.
is chlorine.
Oh!
Which they will do if you put chlorine in them.
No, you don't smell the chlorine. In fact, if there is that smell that we don't like, the way to get rid of it is to add chlorine.
Chlorine reacting with the child's urine.
Yeah. But the fact is that chloramines are formed by sweat and urine and fecal matter and all kinds of other horrible things in swimming pools added to chlorine. And the way to get rid of them is to add chlorine. So before I get to the business of making up your scores, I should tell you that not one of you managed correctly to identify the hoax, because the idea of the hoax was itself a hoax. There was no hoax.
This is an outrage. This is like the end of Lost.
It's endearing how much it matters to them. So everything you heard was as true as trousers. So the winner tonight, wow, the winner tonight with an impressive -1 is Sean Locke.
He won.
And
This discredited show.
second with an improbable -13 is David Mitchell. Third with a doing pretty good -14, Danny Baker. And last with a surprisingly convincing -38, Alan Davis. So my thanks to David, Danny, Sean and Alan, and I leave you with this observation from Will Rogers. The trouble with practical jokes is that very often they get elected. Thank you and good night.
And there's more QI on Friday at 8:30. Now don't miss our coverage of the Ryder Cup here on BBC HD tonight from midnight. That's after the comedy continues next with Live at the Apollo.